My name is Clara Dixon and I built a sustainable fashion brand in Fargo, North Dakota. At 32, I believed I'd created a life worth being proud of, a growing business, a loving husband, and a family I tried to keep close, despite losing my mother young. I even let them live in the house she'd left me, hoping it might make us feel whole again. But I was wrong. Everything fell apart when I discovered my husband had betrayed me with my own sister, my father's daughter, from his second marriage. They had a child together, and my parents demanded that I pay to support that baby, as if their deceit were somehow my responsibility. In a packed courtroom, my sister held my husband's hand, her voice dripping with arrogance. "The court will side with us," she said. "She's just bitter and alone." My parents stood behind her, their expressions smug as though I owed them for their lies. They thought they could corner me into submission, insisting the child was my burden because we were family. What they didn't know was that I'd already uncovered their scheme, not just to steal my company, but to take the house my mother had left me. Every word they spoke was calculated, every act of kindness a performance. I stood firm, my heart pounding, and smiled. "I don't need to prove my innocence," I said quietly. "I just need to show the world their guilt." What I revealed next shattered their entire plan just as they had tried to destroy mine. Want to know how I turn the tables? Stay with me because the truth cut deeper than their betrayal. Have you ever faced family expectations that felt like a knife in the back? Share your story below. Let's talk about standing up for yourself. I grew up in a small Fargo neighborhood raised by my dad and stepmom after losing my mother. Her name was Helen Dixon, a designer whose sketches filled my earliest memories. She was gone too soon, leaving behind a void and a handful of cherished keepsakes. My father, Ronald Dixon, moved on quickly, marrying Yvonne Perry soon after. Their daughter, my half-sister, Bridget Walsh, arrived not long after that, a wailing bundle that changed our home forever. From the start, it was clear where Yvonne's affection lay. She adored Bridget, while Ronald followed her lead, leaving me feeling like a guest in my own house. As a young girl, I was often tasked with caring for Bridget, her small hands always reaching for something. "You're the big sister," Clara Yvonne would say sharply, expecting me to keep her daughter under control. If Bridget spilled a drink or cried through the night, I was the one blamed. Ronald stayed quiet, his nod silently, agreeing with Yvonne, scolding. I swallowed my hurt, desperate for a sense of belonging. I'd already lost my mother. This fractured family was all I had left. As Bridget grew, so did my responsibilities. I fed her, soothed her tantrums, and cleaned her messes while Yvonne and Ronald went out. If she refused to eat, the fault was mine. "Why can't you manage her?" Yvonne would snap, while Bridget, even as a toddler, seemed to know she could get away with anything. School wasn't an escape, either. Bridget, charming to teachers, always left me to deal with her messes. During group projects, she'd chat while I did the work, then bask in the credit. When I spoke up, Yvonne called me selfish. "Your sisters," she'd say, as if that erased the unfairness. Ronald just shrugged. "Sort it out, Clara," he'd mutter. I buried myself in schoolwork, hoping achievement would earn respect. But the sting of their favoritism never faded. The worst came later in childhood. I kept a box of my mom's treasures, a locket, a few photos, and a delicate blue dress she had designed, its tiny floral stitching a piece of her heart. One afternoon, I found Bridget in my room. The dress, crumpled on the floor, torn at the seams. She'd tried it on, her careless hands ripping through the fragile fabric. My heart sank as I picked it up, the flowers frayed and ruined. "It's just a dress," Bridget said carelessly. I wanted to scream, but I held back, knowing what would follow. I showed Yvonne the torn dress, hoping just once she'd take my side. Instead, her eyes narrowed. "Why didn't you keep it safe?" she snapped. Ronald nodded, agreeing I should have been more careful. They sent me to my room without dinner, while Bridget got a treat to cheer her up. I sat alone, clutching the shredded fabric, tears burning my cheeks. That dress was my mother's dream made tangible, and they treated it like garbage. Worse, they treated me as if I didn't matter. That night, something shifted. I saw their behavior for what it was, not just unfair, but deliberate. Ivan and Ronald pushed me aside, elevating Bridget above me. I noticed their hushed conversations when I left the room, their watchful glances whenever my mother's house was mentioned. I didn't grasp its value then, but I felt their quiet scheming. I told myself I was imagining it, that family couldn't be so cold, but the doubt stayed. As time passed, I stopped seeking their approval. I got a job at a local boutique, saving every dollar for a life beyond their reach. Ivan complained that I was neglecting Bridget. Ronald grew distant, his affection reserved for his younger daughter. I kept my mother's locket close, a reminder to keep moving forward. Those years taught me a hard truth. Family isn't always love. It can be a game you never agreed to play. Everything changed when warmth returned to the air, and a letter arrived, sealed with my mom's name, Helen Dixon. Her will left me the house we'd lived in, a modest two-story in Fargo, its walls lined with her sketches of dresses with bold flowing lines. My hands trembled as I signed the papers, my heart swelling. This was her gift, a piece of her I could hold. But tension followed. My stepmom, Yvonne Perry, and my dad, Ronald Dixon, stood nearby as the lawyer left. "You'll keep the house for us, right?" Yvonne asked, her voice syrupy sweet. I nodded, believing family meant sharing, even if they'd given me little in return. I let them stay, Ronald, Yvonne and my sister Bridget Walsh, not out of duty, but out of a longing for connection after losing my mom. I hoped it would make us whole again, not fractured. Ronald said little, but the quick glance he shared with Yvonne felt heavy. I told myself it was nothing, that I was building a home for all of us. Bridget, always indulged, treated the house like her own, leaving chaos. I quietly cleaned up. The house was more than a home. It was my mom's legacy. Her attic sketches pushed me to dream beyond the life I'd known. I was working at a local boutique, learning from visiting designers. That's where I met Jillian Foster, my mom's best friend, a respected Fargo designer with a loyal following. "You've got Helen's spark," she said, flipping through my sketches. Her words ignited something in me. I wanted to create to carry my mom's vision forward. I enrolled in a design program at a local college, juggling classes with night shifts at the boutique. Yvonne disapproved, muttering about my neglecting family duties, meaning watching Bridget, who was more interested in mischief than schoolwork. Ronald backed her, hinting I owed them for living in my house. Their words stung, but I pushed forward, saving every paycheck and sketching late into the night. I refused to let their expectations tether me. As time passed, I saw a path forming. Sustainable fashion was gaining ground, and Fargo's tight-knit community was perfect for a small start. I rented a downtown studio using my savings. Jillian introduced me to suppliers who valued eco-friendly materials. "Start small, dream big," she told me, showing how to source organic cotton. My first collection, simple, clean-line dresses, sold out at a local market. I named the brand Helen's Thread, a tribute to my mom's designs. The work was exhausting. I spent long days sewing and meeting clients. Yvonne and Ronald offered no help, only criticism of my fancy plans. Bridget, chasing her own whims, called my work just clothes. I ignored them, pouring everything into growth. Soon, Helen's Thread had a website and a small shop. I hired a few locals, including a seamstress who taught me new techniques. The house, still home to my family, became a place I visited less, though I kept it open for them. I told myself it was for unity, but their coldness made me question why I tried. Jillian became my anchor. She'd drop by with coffee, sharing stories of my mom's fearless creativity. "Helen would be proud," she'd say warmly. Those words carried me through exhaustion. Eventually, Helen's Thread turned a steady profit with plans for a larger collection. I'd built it without my family's support, only with determination and my mom's legacy. Keeping them in her house was my last effort to hold us together, but their whispers about it, and Bridget's uninvited visits to my shop, felt off. I was too focused on my dreams to see the signs. Then, I met someone who seemed to change everything. Years later, I met Nathan Brooks at a community event. Helen's Thread was thriving in Fargo, and I was speaking at a business fair about sustainable fashion. Nathan, a local accountant with an easy smile, approached me afterward, asking thoughtful questions about my finances. His interest felt genuine, his charm effortless. We began dating, and for the first time, I felt truly seen. He laughed at my late-night sewing stories and didn't flinch when I mentioned my mom's house. After a year of evening walks through Fargo's quiet streets, I married him in a simple park ceremony. My heart swelled as I said my vows, believing I'd found a partner to share both my life and legacy. As the business expanded, I needed someone to oversee the finances. Nathan's skill with numbers made him the perfect choice for CFO at Helen's Thread. "You trust me with this," he teased while signing the contract. I smiled, brushing off a faint unease. He was my husband. His strategies streamlined our budget, trimming costs on eco-friendly packaging. The team appreciated his easygoing nature, and I felt proud believing we were building something lasting together. But my stepmother, Yvonne Perry, had other plans. One night at home, she cornered me. "Hire Bridget," she insisted. "She studied marketing and she's your sister." Bridget Walsh had never cared about my work, often mocking it as just clothes. But Yvonne pushed, saying the job would bring us closer. My dad, Ronald Dixon, nodded in quiet agreement. Wanting peace, I gave in. Bridget joined as marketing coordinator, handling social media. Her work was sloppy, missed deadlines, careless posts. When I pointed it out, she'd shrug. "Relax, Clara, it's not a big deal," she'd say, her tone dismissive. Nathan, though, got along with her too well. I first noticed during a team meeting their shared glances and lingering laughs. My stomach twisted, but I dismissed it as paranoia. After years of mistrust within my family, I didn't want to doubt my husband. Yet the signs multiplied. Bridget lingered in Nathan's office, their talks stretching late. Once I found them huddled over his laptop, her hand brushing his arm. "Just planning posts," Nathan said quickly, his smile a little too practiced. Bridget tossed her hair and left. My chest tightened, but I clung to trust. Yvonne's visits to the shop became frequent, showering Bridget with praise while ignoring the rest of the team. "She's a star," she'd say, glancing toward Nathan. My father sometimes tagged along, discussing numbers with him in hushed tones. I tried to focus on our spring collection. Orders were pouring in, but the tension noted at me. Nathan stayed late, blaming budgets. Bridget posted selfies from the shop, acting as if she ran it. I caught them whispering in the break room, stopping the moment I walked in. "What's up?" I'd ask, forcing a grin. "Just work," Nathan would reply, avoiding my eyes. I confided in Jillian Foster, my mom's old friend. "Am I imagining things?" I asked, describing their closeness. She frowned, stirring her coffee. "Trust your instincts, Clara," she said. "Your mom always watched for what wasn't said." Her words lingered, but I pushed them aside. I didn't want to believe my husband and sister could betray me. My business, my marriage, my mom's house, they were all tied to the family I'd fought to hold together. Still, Nathan's late nights and Bridget's smugness became impossible to ignore. I overheard her on the phone once, laughing about keeping things in the family. My blood ran cold, though I had no proof, just a mounting dread. One late night, Tessa flagged a strange expense in our books. She was my trusted accountant at Helen's Thread, her sharp eye catching what I'd overlooked. "Clara, this doesn't add up," she said, pointing to a string of payments labeled consulting fees to a company called BW Designs. My stomach twisted. Nathan, my husband and CFO, handled all our finances, and I'd trusted him completely. I thanked Tessa, my voice steady, despite the unease creeping in. Something was off and I couldn't ignore it anymore. I stayed late at the shop combing through the financial records. The payments to BW Designs were small but frequent, buried among routine expenses. They weren't connected to any supplier I recognized, and Nathan had never mentioned them. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I debated confronting him. Instead, I went to Derek, our IT specialist, who'd been with Helen's Thread since the beginning. "Can you check the server for anything tied to BW Designs?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. Derek nodded, curious but discreet. Give me a day, he said, already typing. The next evening, Derek called me into his office. His face was grim as he handed me a stack of printed emails. You need to see this, he said. My heart pounded as I scanned the first page. The emails were between Nathan and my sister Bridget Walsh, and their words were chillingly clear. They'd been planning to siphon funds from Helen's thread to start BW Designs, a rival fashion brand. We'll take her market share, Nathan wrote. She's too busy to notice. Bridget's reply was smug. She'll never suspect us. My hands trembled, the betrayal, cutting deeper with every line. But it wasn't just about money. The emails revealed more, a trail of intimate messages, late-night meetings, and coded references to rendezvous at a Fargo hotel. The house will be ours soon, Bridget had written. Ivan's pushing her to crack. My blood ran cold. They weren't only stealing my company. They were after my mom's house, the one I'd let my dad, Ronald Dixon, Ivan Perry, and Bridget live in. The pieces finally fit Ivan's insistence on hiring Bridget, Nathan's late nights, their whispers in the break room. It had all been part of their plan. I sat frozen, the words blurring through my tears. Gillian Foster's warning echoed in my mind. Trust your instincts. I'd ignored every sign, wanting to believe in Nathan and family. But this wasn't carelessness. It was deliberate. BW Designs wasn't registered yet, but the emails mapped out their next moves. Funnel more funds, launch their brand, and force me out. 1. Message from Nathan was blunt. Once we have the house, she's got nothing. Bridget's reply was a knife. She deserves it for thinking she's better than us. I called Gillian, my voice shaking as I told her everything. What do? I asked, clutching the phone. Her tone was firm. You fight Clara. Your mom built that house and you built this company. They don't get to take either. Her words steadied me, though the pain still burned. I'd poured everything into Helen's thread, my heart, my marriage, my hope for family, and they'd plotted behind my back. The next day, I met Derek again and asked him to trace the payments further. He found a bank account linked to BW Designs opened in Bridget's name, but funded through Nathan's approvals. The amounts were small enough to slip past casual checks, but added up to thousands. I felt sick realizing how long they'd been draining my company. Derek hesitated, then added quietly. There's more. They've been emailing my stepmom, too. I scanned the new batch. Ivan had been coaching Bridget, urging her to secure the house and keep Nathan in line. Ronald wasn't mentioned, but his silence in every family argument now screamed complicity. They were all in on it, or at least willing to benefit. That evening, I drove to my mom's house, the familiar porch now tainted. Ivan greeted me with her usual fake warmth. Here to check on us? She asked, her smile tight. I nodded, saying nothing as my eyes swept the room. Bridget lounged on the couch, scrolling through her phone, smirking like she knew something I didn't. Nathan was out working late again. I left without a word, my mind racing. The house, my mother's legacy, was their endgame. They thought I'd handed over the way I'd handed over my trust. Back at the shop, I locked the emails in my desk drawer, my resolve solidifying. I wasn't the naive woman who'd let them live in my house, hoping for unity. I wasn't the trusting wife who'd ignored the signs. I began documenting everything, the transfers, the messages, the accounts. Then I called my lawyer, the quiet man who'd handled my mom's will years earlier. I need to protect what's mine, I said. He listened carefully and promised to investigate BW Designs and their involvement. As I dug deeper, the full scope of their betrayal came into focus. Nathan had been funneling clients to a hidden account, preparing to launch BW Designs, using my designs as their base. Bridget's half-hearted marketing posts had been test runs for their own brand aesthetic. Ivan's frequent visits hadn't been meddling. They'd been reconnaissance. Every step I'd taken to build Helen's thread, every sacrifice I'd made, had become a target for their greed. My father's silence, once just neglect, now felt like betrayal. I sat alone in my office, the weight of it all pressing down. Gillian's words came back to me. You fight and I would. They thought they could take everything. My mother's house, my company, my trust. But I had the truth now, and it was sharper than their lies. I wasn't ready for what came next. The next day, my social media feeds were flooded with accusations. Posts on X crafted by Bridget Walsh painted me as a heartless tyrant who'd abandoned her family. Clara Dixon refused to support her own sister's child. One post read, racking up shares from strangers who knew nothing of the truth. Comments poured in, calling me selfish, greedy, a fraud who'd built Helen's thread on lies. My blood boiled as I scrolled through the attacks, each one a calculated strike. My sister wasn't just betraying me privately. She was dragging my name through the mud in public. I called Tessa, my accountant, who'd seen the posts, too. "They're claiming you owe them child support," she said, her voice tight with disbelief. "It's Nathan and Bridget, isn't it?" I nodded, though she couldn't see me. The emails Derek had uncovered proof of their affair, and their plan to launch BW Designs burned in my mind. They weren't just after my company. They wanted my mom's house and now expected me to bankroll their child. My stepmother, Yvonne Perry, and my father, Ronald Dixon, had joined the smear campaign, retweeting Bridget's lies with their own captions. "Family comes first." Yvonne wrote her hypocrisy thick in every word. I drove to the shop, hands gripping the wheel. The team was buzzing, their eyes flicking toward me as I walked in. We saw the posts. One seamstress whispered, "We're with you, Clara." Their support steadied me, but I needed action. I called a staff meeting, keeping my tone calm yet firm. "Nathan and Bridget are no longer part of Helen's thread," I announced. "They've been working against us." Gasps rippled through the room. Nathan's charm had fooled many, and Bridget's laziness had frustrated them for months. I handed termination letters to Derek for delivery, ensuring every step was documented. "This is my company," I said. "No one undermines it." Nathan stormed in an hour later, his face red. "You can't fire me," he snapped, slamming his hand on my desk. "You'll regret this." I stood meeting his glare. "I regret trusting you," I said, voice ice cold. "Get out." Bridget followed, her smirk gone, replaced by a scowl. "You're pathetic," she hissed, clutching her bag. "You'll lose everything." I didn't flinch. Their threats felt hollow now, their betrayal exposed by the emails locked in my drawer. The team watched silently as they left, the door slamming behind them. The online attacks didn't stop. Yvonne posted a thread accusing me of hoarding my mom's house, claiming I'd kicked them out. It was a lie. I'd let them live there for years, hoping for family. Ronald shared her post, adding, "She's turned her back on us." Their words twisted the knife, but I wasn't the naive woman still begging for approval. I contacted my mom's friend, Jillian Foster, who'd been my rock through every storm. "I need a lawyer," I told her, my voice steady despite the chaos. "Someone who can fight dirty." Jillian didn't hesitate. "Call Heidi. She's sharp and owes me a favor." Heidi, the attorney Jillian recommended, met me at her Fargo office the next morning. Her handshake was firm, her eyes assessing. "I've seen the posts," she said, sliding a tablet across her desk. "They're building a narrative to pressure you." I handed her the emails Derek had found detailing Nathan and Bridget's plan for BW Designs and their affair. Heidi's brow furrowed as she read. "This is fraud," she said. "And the house will lock down the will." She explained that my mom, Helen Dixon, had created an airtight will naming me as sole heir. Yvonne and Ronald had no claim, but their public campaign was meant to force my hand. Heidi dove into the legal details, pulling property records for the house. "They're trying to claim adverse possession," she explained evenly. "Living there for years gives them a weak argument, but the will overrides it." I nodded, my resolve hardening. The house was my mother's legacy, tied to Helen's thread, and I wouldn't let them take it. Heidi promised to file an injunction blocking any move on the property and to counter their lies with a defamation suit. "We'll expose them," she said, pen tapping against her desk. Back at the shop, I worked with Tessa to secure our accounts. We froze Nathan's access and audited every transaction. Derek ran a full sweep of our servers, ensuring no data was leaking to BW Designs. The team rallied around me, their loyalty, my lifeline. Customers began posting in my defense, sharing stories about Helen's Thread's sustainable mission. "Don't let the haters win," one wrote, warming my heart. But the fight wasn't over. Bridget's posts grew nastier, claiming I'd cheated her out of her rightful share of the business. Yvonne doubled down, calling me a disgrace to family. Ronald's silence online, paired with his quiet endorsement of their lies, cut deepest of all. One evening, I drove to the house, the porch lights casting long shadows. Yvonne opened the door, her smile smug. "Come to beg forgiveness?" she asked. I shook my head. "I'm here to remind you whose house this is," I said evenly. Bridget lounged inside, phone in hand, likely drafting another post. Ronald sat in the living room, eyes averted. I didn't stay long, just long enough to make my stance clear. As I turned to leave, Yvonne called after me. "You'll lose in court." I didn't look back. Heidi's confidence was my armor now. The online storm raged on, but I focused on protecting what was mine. Heidi prepared a public statement refuting their claims without revealing the emails. Those were for court. She advised me to stay silent online, letting their lies overreach. "They're desperate," she said. "That's their weakness." I trusted her, though. The weight of betrayal pressed hard. My mom's house, my company, my trust. They'd tried to steal it all. Jillian stopped by the shop, her presence grounding. "You're stronger than they know," she said, squeezing my hand. I clung to that, knowing the fight was far from over. At the courthouse, I faced them one last time. The courtroom was tense as I stepped forward to speak. The Fargo courthouse with its cold wooden benches carried a weight I hadn't felt since my first legal battle years ago. My hands clutched a folder of evidence emails Derek had uncovered, and my mom's will proving Helen Dixon's house was mine alone. Across the room, Nathan Brooks, Bridget Walsh, Yvonne Perry, and my father, Ronald Dixon, sat beside their attorney, their faces shifting between defiance and unease. I straightened, my resolve hardened by months of their deceit. Martin, the seasoned lawyer Heidi had brought in, stood beside me. His calm presence steadied my nerves as I faced the judge. "Your Honor," I began, my voice steady despite the knot in my chest. "These documents reveal a calculated plan to steal my company and my mother's home." I handed over the emails, each page detailing Nathan and Bridget's scheme to funnel funds into BW Designs, their shell company. Their intimate exchanges hinted at an affair, but I focused on the fraud. "They tried to take everything I built," I said, glancing at my sister. Her eyes narrowed, but she remained silent. Martin took over, his tone commanding. "Clara Marie Dixon inherited her mother's home through an airtight will," he said, presenting the document signed by Helen Dixon. "The defendants, Nathan, Bridget, Yvonne, and Ronald, have no legal claim." He pointed to the emails outlining how Nathan as CFO had diverted thousands from Helen's Thread to a bank account in Bridget's name. "This is theft," Martin declared. Their social media campaign was a deliberate attempt to pressure Clara into surrendering her assets. The judge's gaze sharpened, fixed on the defendants. Nathan's lawyer countered, arguing the house belonged to the family since they'd lived there for years. "Clara owes them support," he insisted, gesturing to Bridget, who clutched a notebook as if it held her innocence. Yvonne nodded, her expression a mask of false hurt. Ronald stared at the floor, his silence louder than any defense. Martin swiftly responded, presenting bank records Tessa had audited showing the unauthorized transfers. "Adverse possession doesn't apply," he said firmly. "The will is explicit, and their actions were fraudulent." I watched Bridget shift uneasily as Martin detailed her role. Ms. Walsh used her marketing position to test Clara's designs. For BW Designs, he said, displaying screenshots of her posts eerily similar to Helen's Thread's style. The judge leaned forward, her brow furrowed. I spoke again, my voice rising. "I let them live in my mom's house, hoping for family. They repaid me with lies." Yvonne's lips tightened, avoiding my eyes. Nathan's jaw clenched, his charm gone. Heidi, seated behind me, whispered, "Stay strong." Her work with Martin had built an airtight case. They traced every transaction and email back to Nathan and Bridget with Yvonne's guidance in the background. Ronald's complicity was less direct, but his support for their lies was undeniable. The courtroom fell silent as Martin played his final card, a recorded call legally obtained, where Ivan urged Bridget to push Clara until she breaks. The judge's face hardened, and a flicker of hope stirred inside me. The defense tried to pivot, accusing me of fabricating evidence. Martin shut them down, presenting Derek's affidavit, confirming the email's authenticity from our servers. "This isn't speculation," Martin said. "It's proof of intent to defraud." The judge called a recess and I stepped outside with Jillian Foster, my mom's friend who'd come to support me. "You're doing what Helen would have done," she said, resting her hand on my shoulder. I nodded, clutching the locket my mom had left me, its weight grounding me. When the judge returned, her ruling was swift. "The evidence is overwhelming," she said. "Clara Marie Dixon retains full ownership of the house and Helen's thread. The defendant's claims are dismissed." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Martin's face stayed composed, but Heidi squeezed my arm, her eyes bright. The judge continued, "The plaintiff's actions warrant further investigation for fraud and embezzlement." Nathan's face palled and Bridget's hands trembled. Ivan whispered to their lawyer, her composure cracking. Ronald looked defeated, shoulders slumped. The aftermath was devastating for them. The judge ordered a freeze on Nathan and Bridget's accounts pending a criminal investigation into BW Designs. Their attempt to launch a rival brand collapsed as suppliers alerted by the case cut ties. Ivan and Ronald were evicted from my mom's house, their belongings packed under court supervision. The Fargo community, once swayed by their social media lies, turned against them. Local papers covered the failed scheme and Helen's thread gained new support as customers rallied behind my story. "Justice for Clara," one post read, shared widely on X. Outside the courthouse, the autumn air felt sharp and clean. Jillian joined me, a reminder of my mom's strength. "You fought for her legacy," she said. I nodded, the weight of the trial slowly lifting. Martin and Heidi met me later, outlining the next steps. "The criminal case will take time," Martin said, "but their assets tied to the fraud are gone." I thanked them, my voice thick. The house was mine legally and emotionally, and Helen's thread was safe. Back at the shop, Tessa and Derek greeted me with smiles. The team had kept everything running, their loyalty unwavering. I walked through the studio touching the fabrics my mom once inspired. The sting of betrayal lingered: Nathan's deceit, Bridget's malice, Ivan's scheming, Ronald's silence. But I had won. Their plan to destroy me had failed. I looked at the sketches on my desk, new designs for the next collection. My mother's legacy lived in every stitch, and no one could ever take that away. With the trial behind me, I finally looked toward the future. As I stepped out of the courthouse, I felt a new beginning take shape. The weight of the trial, Nathan's betrayal, Bridget's malice and Ivan and Ronald's complicity finally lifted, leaving room for something lighter. Fargo's crisp air filled my lungs. As I drove to my mother's house, now truly mine. The victory in court had secured Helen's thread, and the home Helen Dixon left me. But a harder decision awaited. Bridget's child, trapped in the aftermath of her schemes, needed a future. I couldn't turn away from an innocent life, no matter how deep her mother's damage ran. I met with Heidi at her office to discuss the child's care. "Bridget's facing charges," she said evenly. "She's in no position to raise anyone. The criminal case against my sister and my ex-husband, Nathan Brooks, had stripped them of stability. Their assets tied to BW Designs were frozen, and their reputations in Fargo lay in ruins." I signed the papers as Clara Marie Dixon, agreeing to take custody. "This isn't about her," I told Heidi. "It's about doing what's right." She nodded, her eyes soft with respect. The choice wasn't easy. My heart ached as I prepared a room in the house, filling it with toys and soft blankets. Each small gesture reminded me of Bridget's cruelty. Her posts branding me selfish. Her emails plotting to steal my company. But the child wasn't her. I named the space Hope's Corner, a quiet vow to offer a gentler start. Jillian Foster, my mother's longtime friend, helped me settle in. "You're stronger than I ever was," she said, adjusting a small crib. I smiled gratefully. "I'm just trying to honor Mom's heart." I severed all ties with my family. Nathan, awaiting trial, sent a letter begging forgiveness. I burned it without reading. Bridget, Yvonne Perry, and my father, Ronald Dixon, tried calling, but I blocked every number. Their voices, once woven into my life, no longer belonged in my future. The house, once a symbol of longing, became a sanctuary for me and the child. I hired a kind local nanny to help while I worked. The pain of betrayal lingered, but I refused to let it define me. Helen's thread flourished. With Tessa handling finances and Derek fortifying our systems, we expanded the shop. New collections inspired by my mother's sketches drew customers from across North Dakota. The community once swayed by Bridget's lies now rallied behind me. Local boutiques stocked our designs and online posts praised our sustainable mission. Clarice a fighter, one customer wrote sharing a photo of her dress. Reading their words, my heart swelled. The team had become my true family, a stark contrast to the one I lost. Inspired by the journey, I founded the Helen Dixon Fund to support women starting their own businesses. Partnering with local organizations in Fargo, I offered grants and mentorship. At the first event, I stood before a small audience, my voice steady. My mom taught me to create and to stand tall. I said, this fund is for women who dare to dream no matter the obstacles. Jillian watched proudly from the front row while Tessa and Derek managed every detail flawlessly. The fund's first grant went to a young designer whose sketches reminded me of my early years. Helping her felt like carrying on my mother's legacy. Over time, peace returned through routine. Mornings began with coffee and sketches at the shop. Afternoons were for the child reading stories in Hope's Corner. Evenings I planned the fund's next steps with Heidi's legal insight. The house once heavy with tension now echoed with laughter. I hung my mother's sketches along the walls, bold strokes that reminded me of everything I'd fought to protect. The scars of betrayal, Nathan's deceit, Bridget's cruelty, Yvonne and Ronald's silence slowly faded, replaced by purpose. Looking back, I've learned that independence and responsibility can heal even the deepest wounds. Betrayal taught me to trust myself and to hold fast to my values. Taking in an innocent child, despite the pain tied to her mother, showed me that kindness isn't weakness, it's strength. Building Helen's thread and the fund proved that no one can steal your dreams unless you let them. To anyone fighting their own battles, I'd say this. Hold on to what's yours. Protect those who need you. And never let betrayal dim your light. My mother's legacy lives in every step I take, and I'm stronger for